course.
And the word we're unpacking today is garrulous.
Ah, yes, garrulous. Okay, it sounds maybe a little formal, bit fussy, but it describes something pretty common.
Let's start right there, at the core. A quick overview from the sources. Seth's blog just cuts right to it, with a definition that really sets the scene. It says garrulous means excessively talkative in a silly, chattering way.
That's the base layer. Excessively talkative. But the really crucial part, the bit that gives it that unique character, is the second part.
Yeah.
In a silly, chattering way.
Right, so it's not just about the amount of talk.
No, it's the quality of the talk.
Yeah, the sources really stress this isn't just, friendly chatting or someone being articulate. It implies a kind of talk that's maybe a bit much, perhaps lacking real substance, like chatter that just spills out.
And this is where Seth's blog draws that really vital distinction. This is where people often get it wrong, according to the source. It points out garrulous is often misused to mean just plain friendly and willing to talk, which is loquacious.
Okay, that feels super important. Loquacious, that means, well, talkative, right? Fluent, enjoys talking.
Exactly. Someone who's great at parties, comfortable holding a conversation, happy to chat, you'd call them loquacious. It's generally positive,
Yeah.
or at least neutral.
If you're loquacious, you talk easily, you have things to say. There's no real judgment baked in about whether it's too much talk or what the talk is about.
Right. But garrulous, based on these sources.
Yeah, when you pick garrulous, you're not just saying talks a lot. You're saying they talk too much, excessively, and specifically in that silly, chattering way.
There's a strong hint in the sources that this isn't deep, meaningful conversation.
It's talk that fills space, maybe without a clear point.
And the source gives a perfect, really relatable example to hammer this home. Seth's blog says you should save garrulous to describe relatives who call frequently and make it impossible to get off the telephone no matter how hard you try.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that lands. We've all been there, haven't we? That call that just goes on and on. You're dropping hints, oh, I gotta go. But they just keep talking, maybe about, really trivial stuff, jumping from one thing to the next.
That's the picture. It's not necessarily someone charmingly loquacious, it's someone being garrulous. The talk feels excessive, maybe rambling, unfocused.
It really captures that feeling of talkativeness spilling over, like it can't be contained.
Exactly. The excess is key, plus that specific flavor of silly chattering.
Okay, so the sources give us this core idea. Garrulous means excessive, chattering talk. It's different from just being talkative or fluent, which is loquacious. Now let's look at those Merriam-Webster examples you shared. How does this word actually get used? Because what's fascinating is how they show the range of things it applies to.
Yes, they really flesh out the definition.
Yeah.
Sometimes very directly, sometimes, well, metaphorically in quite surprising ways.
Let's start with the straightforward ones, the human examples. Okay, like this. He became more garrulous after drinking a couple of beers. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally. Alcohol can loosen the tongue, lead to more talk, maybe less filtered talk, more chatter.
Or describing Bono as a noisy and garrulous man, especially when silence is wanted.
Pairing noisy with garrulous really amps it up. It suggests the talk is loud, maybe attention-grabbing, and just too much for the situation. Overwhelming.
And the examples keep coming. A garrulous man with a wide smile, burly, garrulous Mike Doherty, even historical figures like the garrulous Leon Trotsky, or modern ones. The host Sadet Peker is garrulous, menacing, and more than a little grandiose.
See how the other words change the feel? Garrulous man with a wide smile. Maybe his excessive chatter is kind of friendly, less annoying.
Right. But garrulous next to menacing or grandiose.
Yeah, that definitely leans into the negative side. Excessive talk that feels self-important, maybe out of control.
It's like a shorthand for a character type. You see the kind, garrulous John contrasted with the blunter Winston.
Right. John's garrulousness is softened by kindness. Maybe just a gentle, constant stream of chatter. Winston, the opposite. Few words, maybe even abrupt.
So these human examples really ground the word in its most obvious use. People talking. Calling someone garrulous gives you an immediate sense of how they talk, not just that they talk.
Precisely. It's about the style and excess of their talk.
Okay, but this is where the sources, especially the Merriam-Webster examples, get really interesting. They apply garrulous to things that, well, they can't literally talk, like the garrulous energy of Streisand's Cabaret Act.
Yeah, that's a great one. An act doesn't chatter, obviously, but the energy can be described that way.
So what does that mean?
Well, it suggests an energy that's just Overflowing,
Yeah.
right? Highly expressive, maybe jumping around a lot, so lively it feels like a torrent of chatter,
Yeah.
but delivered through performance. It's that feeling of excessive, spilling out communication applied to the act's dynamism.
Huh. Okay. Or how about this one? This was really unexpected. Then there's Tullen Man's hair, which may end up being the most garrulous part of him. Hair? How can hair be garrulous?
Yeah, it's a fantastic metaphor, isn't it? Hair can't talk, but studying ancient hair can reveal a ton of information about diet, health, environment, maybe even travel. So the source is using garrulous to mean excessively revealing, extensively communicative, like the hair is just chattering with data, spilling secrets more than any other part of the body. It connects that idea of excessive talk to excessive information.
Wow, okay. Garrulous data. That makes sense. It takes that core, meaning excessive communication like chatter, and applies it to something nonverbal that still communicates a lot.
Exactly. Or, look at this one, about rules. The roster rules that are known read like a garrulous alphabet soup of acronyms and directives.
Garrulous alphabet soup. That's such a vivid phrase.
Isn't it? Alphabet soup is just a jumble. So describing rules like that suggests they're confusing, overly complex, maybe full of useless jargon, the acronyms. Calling it garrulous implies this complexity, this mess. Feels like, well, like excessive, meaningless chatter.
Like communication that just overwhelms you without actually explaining anything, like someone chattering nonsensically.
Yes, that feeling of information overload that isn't helpful, it just swamps you. Like relentless, pointless talk, excessive and unclear.
And even abstract stuff like astrology gets this treatment. The moon is pairing up with amorous Venus in your garrulous 11th house.
A garrulous 11th house. Okay, so in astrology, the 11th house relates to groups, social networks, hopes. Calling it garrulous suggests that area of your life is marked by excessive activity or communication right now. Lively, chattering interactions, maybe.
So again, applying that quality of excessive chattering communication to a concept.
It seems to fit.
So these non-human examples really stretch the word, but they hold on to that core sense of excessive, spilling out, maybe unruly communication or information, whether it's actual talk or energy or data from hair or complex rules or astrological activity. Garrulous seems to capture that specific quality of being overly communicative in a way that feels like persistent, maybe overwhelming chatter.
Right. They really prove it's not just a simple synonym for talkative. It describes a specific kind of communication. Excessive. The nuance of being maybe silly, chattering, unruly, or even just overwhelmingly revealing, like chatter that won't stop.
Okay, so let's bring this back. What does all this unpacking mean for you listening right now? Why spend time on just one word?
Well, understanding this specific shade of garrulous and how it's different from loquacious, it gives you a much sharper tool.
How so?
You can now describe that relative on the phone with the perfect word. You understand that if a writer calls a politician garrulous, they might be hinting their talk is not just plentiful, but maybe rambling or unfocused or just too much style over substance.
Right. It lets you pick up on the subtle judgment or the precise observation someone is making with their word choice. And crucially, it helps you choose the right word yourself.
Exactly. Instead of just saying talkative, which could be neutral or good, you can use garrulous when you specifically mean talkative to an excessive, chattering degree.
It's about being precise, avoiding being vague.
You wouldn't call someone who gives a brilliant, concise speech garrulous. You save it for that specific quality the sources point to. It just refines how you perceive things and how you talk about them.
It really shows how much meaning gets packed into one word, doesn't it? And why growing your precise vocabulary isn't just about sounding smart. It's about thinking clearly and communicating better.
Absolutely. It's like having the right color paint for the exact shade you need.
So let's wrap up this deep dive. Quick recap of what we found about garrulous in the sources you shared. At its core, excessively talkative, key nuance, in a silly or shattering way.
And Seth's blog really drove home that vital difference from loquacious. Loquacious is just friendly, willing to talk. Garrulous is, well, it's that relative on the phone you can't escape from.
Yeah. And then the Merriam-Webster examples showed us the sheer range. It's not just people. It can be the overwhelming energy of a performance.
The surprising amount of data spilling out of ancient hair.
The confusing mess of alphabet soup rules.
Or even the buzz of activity in an astrological house.
Knowing garrulous lets you pinpoint and describe the specific type of excessive communication or revelation wherever you see it. It's the word for talk, or communication like talk, that's just too much. in that particular chattering way.
It puts a name to that specific kind of overcommunication.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to maybe mull over based on these sources. If garrulous implies something negative or at least annoying about excessive talk, especially if it's like chatter, what does that tell us about how we value silence or conciseness? Or maybe meaningful talk?
That's interesting. Where is that line?
Exactly. Where's the line between just being friendly and talkative and becoming garrulous? Talking like alphabet soup, as that one example put it. And when you think about how just choosing one word garrulous instead of loquacious can totally change how we see someone, well, what does that reveal about the subtle power language holds?
Words are definitely more than just labels. They shape perception. Choosing carefully really matters.
It really does. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into garrulous.
Our pleasure.